Good morning and welcome to the Killik & Co market update. Dozens of companies have been reporting this week, which has kept our research team very busy. Two of the ones that we've been focusing on have been Microsoft and Alphabet. Here's a chart showing the two share prices over the last year. Until this week, they had achieved fairly similar returns, both up by over 40%. When their results came out this week, however, Microsoft shares went up on the day, but Alphabet's dropped by 9.6%. The reason was differing levels of performance in the company's cloud computing divisions. On here, you can see that Google, owned by Alphabet, grew its cloud revenues by 21% during the last year. A decent number, but it was behind the 26% that analysts had been hoping for. Google search revenues were up by 11% and YouTube ad revenues were up by 12%. Microsoft's Azure, which is its cloud computing platform, grew revenues by 29%, ahead of expectations. There was also a positive revenue growth for Office, LinkedIn, and Xbox. Also this week, US oil company Chevron has announced the acquisition of another oil company called Hess for $53 billion. And this deal really highlights the differing attitudes about fossil fuels between the US and Europe. While many European oil companies have been pivoting towards renewable power, the American ones seem to be doubling down on fossil fuels. On this chart here, we're comparing the share price returns, including dividends, of BP and Shell in the UK, shown in green on this chart, and then Chevron and Exxon in the US, shown in pink and black. On a 10-year basis, all four have produced very similar returns. However, you can see that BP and Shell were ahead for a time in 2017 to 2019, and that was when sustainable investing was becoming more popular. Exxon at the time was being heavily criticised for its lack of focus on reducing carbon emissions. More recently, though, Exxon and Chevron have caught up. The story looks very different on a 5-year basis. Exxon and Chevron have moved ahead as the war in Ukraine and the unrest in Israel have pushed up oil prices and benefited the companies with less exposure to renewables. A quote that has been circulating this week in the news from Mike Wirth, CEO of Chevron, has said on the subject of oil, "We are not selling a product that is evil, we are selling a product that's good." And finally, there's been a lot of focus recently on a type of obesity drug called a GLP-1. These were initially developed to treat diabetes, but they were found to suppress appetites, and they are now being prescribed specifically to treat weight loss. The companies developing these are Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. Both share prices have more than doubled in the last 2 years, and on here you can see the jump in August of this year when the companies updated the market on the demand they were seeing for these drugs. Since then, we've seen weakness in companies that make snacks, the concern being that if loads of people start taking appetite suppressants, less snacks will be sold. And you can see the weakness in McDonald's in the grey and Mondelez, owner of Cadbury's, in the pink. Other stocks in the wider consumer sector, such as Procter & Gamble, have been caught up in the sell-off, even though Procter & Gamble doesn't actually have any food or beverage exposure. Some analysts in the healthcare space have been a bit skeptical of these GLP-1s. They're expensive, and it's thought at the moment that people would need to remain on them indefinitely if they want to keep their weight down. And furthermore, they haven't been around for very long, so there's very little detail as to the long-term side effects of these. Back in 2006, Sanofi launched an obesity drug called Acomplia, and there was initially quite a lot of excitement, but the drug was withdrawn just 2 years later when it was shown to cause depression and suicidal thoughts. So we'll be watching this space very closely over the coming months. And moving on to next week, it's still looking very busy on our calendar. We are looking forward to results from McDonald's and oil companies BP and Shell. That's it from us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.